about possibly shifting dates again. So I said I'm very flexible, so your wife and I.
She's never been certain on that date. So.
Yeah, which is okay. I'm flexible. I'm rolling with it, so it's all good. But in the meantime, depending on how long I have or don't have, I wanted to do kind of a mini series, like a lead-in to our class that Brent will be leading on finances and biblical principles for money management. I think it's so important, and I just want to kind of pave the way, I guess, for that study and just get us in the right mind frame. And I hope that people get excited about this and we can get a bunch of people in. We're going to combine both the adult class here and the teen class because we feel that that's absolutely foundational for them. And it's something that I didn't receive. Mandy's here, you can attest. We didn't grow up in a very financially responsible home. In fact, it was kind of the polar opposite. And so we were never taught about money management. We were never taught about principles. It was all like, just put your faith in God and cross your fingers and God will take care of you. Well, I think it's incredibly irresponsible to live life that way. And I don't think that's biblical. And, you know, like we can point to scriptures that Jesus used where he says, leave everything and follow me. And, he's talking to his disciples. And we apply that to all Christians as if that's like the standard norm for everybody everywhere. That you live in poverty, you take a vow of poverty. And so in a lot of Christian circles, we've almost expected that people just give until there's nothing left that they can give. They give of their time. They sacrifice their families. I think we oftentimes in churches, we ask way too much of our unpaid volunteers. And a lot of times people would demand even more. And I think there's a better way. So I think there's a way that we can all work together in a way where the body functions with each of the parts working independently yet together. And the Bible, I think, is pretty clear on that. So what you're looking at here, and this is kind of the segue into this, this was yesterday. You can barely see Cameron, but Cameron's right there, Eden's there, and Isaac is the co-pilot. This is the EAA Young Eagles program. We started our kids in this last year. It's 100% free. You get to fly. The kids get to fly. We don't get to fly. I want to clarify that. The things we sacrifice, right, Joyce? The parents don't get to fly, but the kids get to fly for free. And the idea is to kind of entice them because we have such a shortage of pilots everywhere. And so it's to introduce them where they get to talk to pilots and work their way around an airplane. There's instructional time where we sat and listened to young pilots. And it was just an all-around good experience. Isaac is absolutely fully dedicated to a future of aviation, like absolutely 100%. He knows that's what he wants to do. He thinks it, he breathes it, he dreams it, and we want to help him get there. So the last time he got shoved in a plane, the airport was really disorganized and they just kind of shoved kids everywhere. They separated our kids, they didn't get to fly together. Isaac sat in the back seat of an airplane, and it was his dream to sit up front. He wanted to co-pilot. And so this time they were very organized. We expressed that to the pilot, and he goes, cool. He's like, you ever fly a plane before? Isaac said, no. He goes, well, today that changes. He's like, you're going to fly. So there is Isaac solo flying while the pilot was just talking to him and telling him how to make his turns. And Isaac got to fly yesterday. So we got home, and Isaac is looking up airplanes that he wants to buy. So we're kind of digging and doing a little research, and he finds the Piaggio P180 Aventi. And that's this plane here. It's the fastest turboprop airplane. You can see it's a pusher. And they call it the Ferrari of the skies. It's an Italian airplane. Beautiful, beautiful private jet. So he comes up with this plan, and he has this idea to buy a plane. He's not sure if this is the one he wants yet. He was pricing them. For a used one, you can get them around $1.2 million, to which his response was, "That's actually not too bad." He's like, "That's doable." He's like, I have to make my money. He's like, basically I'm not under the illusion that I can just buy a $1.2 million plane. So he's like, I have to come up with a way to invest and, make my money. But my plan is to buy that plane, and then I'm going to be Eden's private pilot because she wants to travel the world. And so they have this plan and this scheme, and then he's going to figure out how to, on the days he's not flying it, he's going to, since he's the owner of the plane, he's going to rent it out and have other pilots, private pilots, take high-class business people around. And actually, they make pretty good money. The people who do that make a killing. Yeah. So clearly he's thought through this. And I don't want to be that parent that says, no, that's not attainable. That, what do you want to be when you grow up? Let's get real. Let's talk college. Let's talk, the traditional 9-to-5 job, and you just work yourself into the ground and try to get extra hours and overtime so that you can work your life away and die and hope that you have enough money to scooch into retirement. We don't stop our kids from dreaming and planning, and we encourage them and we support them. And I think there's something to that. So I'd seen this video. The source down here, it's Day Trading in Jesus. It's this guy, and it just kind of captured my attention because this guy was talking about the principles. It was something like the 5 Bible verses that changed my life and made me into a millionaire. And a lot of times those are clickbait kind of things, and so you take them with a grain of sand or salt or whatever expression you want to use. But it was pretty interesting. And so I took those principles out of that because I think what he's saying and what the Bible's saying clearly applies to our lives in all different areas, not just financially, but in the way that we view church, the way that we view volunteerism, the way that we view the world around us. And it doesn't matter what age you're at. It doesn't matter if you're 87 or 7, these principles still apply equally. So here are the principles. Number one, he said it's the foundation of faith. And so the scripture is Matthew 17:20. He said to them, "For truly I say to you, if you have faith like a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." And he was talking about how, you can't just recite this Bible verse and think, oh, that's a cool verse. You actually have to believe this. And he's like, my whole life I've been a Christian, and I never actually believed this, that there is nothing that's impossible. Do you guys know the context for this scripture? Which story is this? You guys know? The young boy who the parents say he's having seizures. It's interesting. They don't identify this as a demon. Jesus does. The father comes, he pleads with Jesus. He says, "Will you please heal my son? He keeps having seizures." And often he's thrown into the fire or water. And Jesus said, how long has this gone on? Well, his whole life. And this little kid, who's probably not so little anymore, has suffered tremendously. And Jesus goes on with the conversation with this father, and he says, your disciples were not able to heal him. And Jesus gets a little bit agitated. And he says, you faithless generation. And Jesus went, he heals the boy immediately. And his disciples come back and they're infatuated. And they're like, Jesus, why couldn't we heal this little boy? And his response is absolutely chilling. And he said, because you lack faith. And then he went on and he said this. I mean, these are people they've been with Jesus, they've seen the miracles. It's not like a surprise that they can heal people. They've been healing people. And so why is it that at this moment they lacked faith? I don't know the answer. This is open-ended. Why do you think they lacked faith in that moment? What was it about this boy that all of a sudden their confidence, for whatever reason, it dropped and they didn't have the faith? What would cause that? Put yourself in the disciples' shoes. Like I said, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's just human nature in us. What would cause you to doubt? Don't be shy. All of you are like, I wouldn't doubt. I would have walked right in there and healed him.
People doubt when it comes to kids. Like I think I've heard. You know, a lot of people, whenever kids get cancer and stuff, I know it really rocks a lot of people.
Experiences, seeing other kids die.
Yes.
Well, I'll give a Star Wars geek explanation.
Let's have it.
Something here. You know when The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke is getting trained by Yoda and he's lifting stones, and then Yoda says, "Lift the X-wing out of the swamp," and Luke's like, "I can't do that. That's too big."
Yeah.
Is it a level of, well, we can heal these little ailments and these little things, but this is too big for us. It's too much, and it's a level of how far can you go?
That's a great point. Not having the experience of casting out demons, or there's still that bizarre mix because the father says he's having seizures. Right? In the father's mind, it's a medical condition. Jesus clearly identifies it. He casts out the demon. And so maybe it's that bit of lack of experience with whatever this ailment is. It's too big. We've lifted rocks, but this, this is kind of too big for us.
One commentary I was just reading said they thought that they had to have Jesus actually there with them in order to do it.
Yeah.
They couldn't do it on their own. They had to have his physical presence.
We don't have permission. We don't have authority. We don't have the know-how, whatever it is. Yeah, Jesus wasn't with them. And we know that from the text. Very clearly, Jesus was not with them.
One key part still is your faithless generation. I'm going to focus on it for a second. I'm not so sure they didn't try or even believe.
Oh, I'm fully convinced they did try.
But even they could not do it. It's the focus of where their trust was. Their trust was in themselves. You said they may not have had confidence. I'm thinking they may have been personally confident of their ability and not relying on God to do it.
That's an incredible point, too. In case you didn't hear that online, Charles is saying the disciples most likely had confidence in their own ability. They've been healing. They've been doing miracles. And maybe they had confidence in their own ability to do it. But Jesus' focus is on this faithless generation. And what he means by that is faith in God. Faith that God is the one. And it's kind of reminiscent of, maybe not to this degree, but Moses, right? Striking the rock. Moses was irritated. He was very angry with the people. And he says, something to the effect of, now I got to bring water from this rock. And then he strikes the rock and water comes out of it. Clearly, it wasn't Moses bringing water out of that rock. That was God doing that. And God still allowed that. I mean, unlike this story, God still allowed that water to flow from the rock. But then he comes back and he absolutely chastises Moses. And it's his lack of faith. It's his anger. It's his focus on his own self and his own abilities.
Back to the Star Wars example again. After Yoda lifts the X-Wing out of the swamp, Luke says, I don't believe it. And then Yoda says, that's why you fail.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, think about how that applies to us in all kinds of areas. We fail at different areas. And a lot of times we fail because we put our confidence in ourselves.
And what we think we can do.
That's right. And think about in the church realm. How often we put confidence in our ability to, I'm really good at this, or I'm really good at this, and this is my gift. And like we kind of mask it in this language that puts the focus on our abilities and not on what God is doing through us.
And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't focus on those gifts that we've been given.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That we have to have faith that God
But that's right. It's the recognition that God gave us those gifts. These are given. The only reason I can do these things is because God gave me this gift. God gave me the wisdom. God gave me the know-how. God gave me the talents, whatever it is. And so everything that I do, I can do this because there's nothing that's impossible for us because God's the one doing it. It's not me. Joseph, right? Hey, I hear that you can interpret these dreams. No, that's not true. I don't have the ability to interpret dreams. Wait, that's not what I was told. I was told that you're the guy to interpret dreams. What was Joseph's response? No, only God can interpret dreams. And then Joseph goes and does what? Interprets the dreams. And he properly puts the credit back on God. So here's the idea. Belief is the starting point. Without faith that something is possible through God, our actions lack power. So the application part is, what mountain are you facing? Is it a difficult goal, a strained relationship, personal struggle? Is it money problems? Is it marriage problems? What is it? And you begin by affirming in prayer that God can and will fix that situation. Principle 2 is seeking divine wisdom. So he said, going back to what Charles said, it's not about how smart I am. And he's specifically talking in the context of trading, being a day trader. And he said, I still was accustomed to, if I just learn the charts and I learn, how to break that mold of 90+% of traders losing money. 90+% are unsuccessful. They will lose everything. Less than 10% are successful. No matter how much they study, no matter how much they learn. So he kept losing. He kept losing everything. And he came back and he said, you know what? There's something to this. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. How often do we pray for wisdom and really mean it and apply it? A lot of times it goes back to what both Brent and Charles were saying. We're like, all right, I just have to grind harder. I have to study more. I have to get in the game. I have to show up to more events. I have to go to what do they call them? The continuing education courses. Whatever. Like I've got to do more. And it's interesting. The number one cause for this 90% plus failure is people overtrading. It's not that they don't have a system that works. It's not that they don't have the education. It's that they don't have the discipline to stop, to just stop.
It's like people that gamble.
Yeah, and you name it. Over volunteering, over committing to helping people. How many of us are guilty of that? Look at what Jesus did throughout his ministry. He often withdrew to lonely places to what? To pray. He didn't immerse himself and say, all right, I got 3 years. It's 3 years and counting till cross time. So I'm going to milk every second out of every day, and I'm going to stay up and I'm going to burn myself out until there's nothing left of me. That's not what his sacrifice, when he talks about taking up your cross daily and following me, he's not talking about burning yourself out beyond recognition. We can over anything. We can overwork, right? To where we sacrifice our families. We can over volunteer. We can overcommit in so many different areas. Sometimes we just need to stop, breathe, and pray for wisdom. And the scripture is very clear. God will grant it to you. We're not expected to have all the answers. God invites us to come to him for guidance. So when we face these complex situations or something that causes anxiety or whatever it is the first thing we do to ask God for wisdom for how to navigate that? Or is it to get on the internet and go down 90 million different rabbit trails to try to figure out how we fix it? Right? Or do we argue with AI just for the sake of doing it? I'm sure you are. That's funny. All right, principle number 3 is being a good steward. And the verse here is the parable of the talents. We all know this. But in the end, Jesus says, everyone who has more will be given, and he will have an abundance. That's not speculation. That's not theory. That's fact. Jesus says it so matter-of-factly. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And the idea is, the person with the 1 talent parked it. And he was so proud. The master comes back months later and he's like, Master, I took your talent and I made sure it was secure. I buried it, I hid it, I protected it so that I could give it back to you when you returned. What was his response?
He wasn't happy about it.
Yeah, you lazy servant. Yeah, I gave you this talent. And instead of multiplying it, you parked it. And the others, one was given, 5 talents, and he multiplied it. He turned that into 10, and the other had 10 and turned it into 20 or something like that. They multiplied that talent. And this applies to so many different areas. It's definitely not just talking about finances. It's your spiritual life. It's, do you take what God has given you, and do you work until you're sick? There's one of 2 extremes, and both extremes I think are equally as dangerous. You work until you can't have anything left inside of you to work anymore, and you still have nothing to show for it at the end of the day. Or you just park it and you're lazy and you don't do anything with it. And those are 2 extremes that I think are both equally as dangerous. And then there's that middle ground that says, okay, I'm going to take what God has given me. I'm going to take the ability to whatever. Give me some examples, just of talents. Gifts. Doesn't have to be yourself. It could be anybody. Just name them. What are some spiritual gifts? Okay, hospitality. All right, are you going to open your house up once a year and come back and say, okay, look, I have the gift of hospitality, and once a year at Thanksgiving, I make this big meal and I invite people in. I invite people from the community, and I do that. Or, all right, that's one extreme. That's kind of the lazy extreme. The other is over hospitality, to the detriment and sacrifice of your family, of your finances, where it's, look at the cost of food. And you're like, but this is my gift. This is what I'm meant to do. The smart one in this parable, you know what they would do? What would the smart person do? They would disciple other people. They would multiply that talent by teaching other people, training other people who also share that talent, and they would lighten their load. The Bible is so pregnant with examples of people delegating something, and I'm preaching to the choir here myself. How about it, Jacob? I'm not a good delegator. I work myself into stroke/heart attack territory constantly. And Mandy, I don't know where I get that from. Because none of us in the family, none of us are workaholics. Right? I'm being sarcastic. We all have that curse of being workaholics. Just take something on yourself. It's easier, it's quicker to just take it up and do it yourself. I don't want to bother other people. I don't want to they have their own busy schedules, right? We come up with all these excuses, but you look at the Bible over and over and over and over and over again, from cover to cover, from Moses when Jethro said, what you're doing is not smart. Get some other people with wisdom and ability, and you get them to solve the smaller problems, and you, Moses, you deal with the bigger problems. You've got to delegate. Acts chapter 6, the feeding of the distribution of the food to the widows. Hey, we need you guys to come off of the preaching gig for a little bit, and you need to help out. We're getting overworked. We're getting overburdened. This is a big problem. What was the answer? Quote, it would not be right for us to neglect the gift, the ministry of preaching in order to wait on tables. Instead, select from yourselves 7 men who are full of wisdom and the Holy Spirit and get them to do it. And I've said this so many times, you guys ought to be able to memorize this, but at that point, up to that point, Luke has been saying the Lord added to the church, 3,000 people. The Lord added to the church that day, several thousand people. At that point in Acts chapter 8, the language shifts, and Luke says, and the church multiplied greatly. It's this pivotal point of exponential growth because they learned to delegate. That's what this parable is talking about. It's not, you just got to work harder, you got to grind more, you got to keep your head in the game, you got to just work more hours, stay up later, wake up earlier. You got to work. No, you've got to ask for wisdom and delegate these things. And this applies to every area of our life. I mean, with money, think about what we do. I've got to get more hours in. I've got to work the overtime. I've got to pick up side hustles. I've got to, I did that game for a long time, and I burned out to the point of I was unrecognizable. And you know what I do now? Sit back, let compound interest do its work, just keep slowly building that up and let it do its thing. And then in the meantime, it's interesting. Frees up a whole lot of time. We do a whole lot of things that we never would get to do if we were working around the clock, if we were trying to just catch up and get by. It's so much more relaxing and enjoyable. Because you know who feels the weight when you're working yourself into the grave? I don't have time for this. Dad's got to work. Dad's got to grind. it's not free to do sports. It's not free. You want to do all these things. It's not free. Guess what? Find free things to do. They're out there. This is 100% free. That's right. So, yeah, these biblical principles are life principles in every aspect of life. Discipline. 1 Corinthians 9:25 and 27, Paul says, every athlete exercises self-control in how many things? Love that word. All things. But I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. What's Paul saying there? I'm not going to work myself into the ground only to be disqualified. I work with purpose. I train. I do these things so that when I go out into the field, I do it effectively. I do it efficiently. So the idea is spiritual and personal growth requires intentional effort and self-control. What did I say about trading? What's the number one reason why people fail? They over trade. They can't stop. It becomes like a gambling addiction. They can't stop. That means think about this, over 90% of people, and these are random samples of people from all over the world, doesn't matter your country, your culture, does not matter, the statistics are the same. What does that say about humanity? That means 90% of people don't have the most important thing for managing and maintaining life, self-discipline. 90% of us fail at being self-disciplined, at training. It does. But greed often is like, I'm in enough communities like I kind of watch. Greed is fueled by necessity. It's kind of like a side hustle. It's a side gig. I need more money. I need more, I'm struggling to pay my bills. And if I can just become a millionaire overnight. It's that mindset that we got to do things instantly. And it eliminates this. It's a practice, discipline. Look at sports. Paul's talking about sports here and applying that to a spiritual life. I'm reading the Bible through in 90 days again. I just started the plan again. I do this very often. And I'm in this phase right now where I missed a day. Biggest mistake. I missed a day. I'm now something like 14 or 16 days behind. That one day turned into 16 days really quickly, and I'm still reading. I'm in the catch-up phase right now, and I am pedaling hard to catch up. Where did I fail? Self-discipline. Habit. Wake up. It's boring, it's routine, and that's why people fail at discipline. There's no magic in discipline. It's just showing up. Just doing it. It literally takes, I'm a fast reader, it takes me about 15 minutes to read my daily reading for a 90-day. Read the Bible from cover to cover in 90 days. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes a day. Discipline. This kid in the middle, this was on Saturday, is disciplined. This was at the track. It was like a track camp all last week. That was Friday. Friday was their last day. This was for the high jump. I don't know if you see this. See the difference in height here? See how this kid's towering over Cameron a little bit? Look where their feet are. Natalie is like, oh, I thought that kid was on the higher platform. She's like, he's a foot lower than Cameron, and he's about 3-4 inches taller. This kid is about my height, just a little bit shorter than me. Cameron tied for the highest record, like the number one record for his age, for the high jump. He tied it. He missed the all-time record by 1 inch. I didn't know he can jump. I had one of the baseball coaches come up to me, and he's like, I got to tell you, Cam's form is absolutely perfect. He's like, how long has he been doing high jump? I said, to my knowledge, never. That's the first time ever that he's done high jump. He missed the all-time record by 1 inch. And you know what he told me? He goes, next year I'm going to beat it. I'm going to get the all-time high record. What's that come from? Xander has it too. What's it come from? Being in the yard, being disciplined, going out self-motivated. They are grinding and grinding and grinding, but they're having fun doing it. It's just practice. It's part of a routine. If they miss a day, if our sons miss a day, they're like, like twitching. And it's not because they're like, I got to be the best. It's because they enjoy doing it. They love it. They love the sport. They love baseball. And so that principle applies to every single aspect of our life. Paul doesn't win at preaching by accident. We've got to stop talking about people being lucky. Oh, they're just so lucky. Must be nice, right? We use that expression a lot. Must be nice to be able to whatever. That's not luck. I never look at somebody and I'm like, boy, are they lucky. I wish I had their luck. I look at people who are successful at anything. What's that? Discipline.
Okay, because, I see people go to the casinos and stuff, and they win all the time.
I think there's good fortune. Don't get me wrong. I think that there's good fortune, but yeah, what you don't see though are the people who go to the casino, and I personally know people who that happens to, and they'll win like 2 or 3 times, big amounts, $20,000, $30,000, and then they'll have a loss of like $70,000. We don't see that part of it. Eventually that luck runs out.
Well, they don't talk about the loss.
That's exactly right. It's the same with all the clickbait stuff, like, oh, I became a millionaire and I just, breathed and it's so easy. And I'm like, no, it never works that way. It's all lies, it's clickbait. It requires discipline. And then I'll close with this. So finally, this scripture, 2 Peter 1, 3, and 4, his divine power has granted us all things. Notice this word keeps coming up in reference to God. God grants to us all things that pertain to life and godliness, by which he has granted to us his precious and very great promises. And so the idea is God's promises in the Bible are not just an ancient story, they're active and available for believers today. So the application part of that is, we activate these promises by believing them. We declare them in prayer, and we live as though they're true. And I think the majority of people don't do this. They're not disciplined and dedicated to prayer. They're not disciplined and dedicated into setting boundaries and knowing when to stop. They overwork, they're overtired, overstressed, over-anxious. Think about where we are as society. I mean, just look around. Just take a snapshot of people in your little circle of friends. And look at where people are. Exhausted, tired, anxious, depressed, poor, always struggling for, right? It's not meant to be this way. And so this guy was right, and he said there is a formula. It's not really the word he used, but there's biblical guidance for how to be effective and efficient for God's kingdom, to where he gets all the glory. All right, we're out of time. We're actually over time, so I'm going to stop there, and we'll see you guys here in a few minutes.